Well, on the heels of a winning week for West Virginia football in recruiting, so off the field, but maybe on the field in the future, and some major news that could shake up the Big 12. Mountaineer Report is back after a brief holiday hiatus here. Mike Asti will be joined by Luke Blain. Mountaineer Report available everywhere you get your podcasts, and of course on the West Virginia Sports Now network. And Luke, we were going to start with the big week for Rich Rodriguez and his staff, but we are going to start with the headline news of the night as we were recording this live on Friday night when Penn State's coaching search finally comes to an end. And what do? They eventually pluck another team's head coach, a Power Four's head coach, and it ends up being a loss for somebody within the Big 12. So, first off, how you doing, man? It's been a
Doing
minute
good.
since we did one of
Yeah,
these.
absolutely. Yeah, doing good. Had a good holiday season.
Yeah.
Uh, and just hanging out in Parkersburg again. About to make that trip to Charleston tomorrow, so excited for that. And yeah, yeah, nothing too crazy going on over here. Hope the same for you. How was your holiday?
Yeah, Thanksgiving's my favorite holiday, so it was that
It's
again.
underrated.
It's a very underrated holiday. It's the greatest holiday of all time for me. It's just about food, family, and football. And if you don't want to talk to
Hmm.
your family, just watch some football and eat some food. So
Exactly.
I'm all about Thanksgiving. Unfortunately, now that is behind us as we move towards other holidays. But yeah, Thanksgiving was fantastic for me. And then the West Virginia football program was about to, after Thanksgiving, kind of enjoy their holiday season as they've been doing a lot of recruiting work. But again, as we mentioned here, Penn State also did some work finally finding a head coach. And I could talk about that. Well, maybe we'll do it on some of my other shows, but not here. We're going to focus on what's going on within the Big 12 because what Penn State did affects now the Big 12. Penn State took them 3 weeks plus a month freaking to find a new coach. They went through a myriad of candidates. It was really getting asinine for a while. We had leaked audio. It was a mess, but they land on a pretty damn good coach. So they kind of win the search despite how messy it freaking was. And they're definitely investing in Matt Campbell, who leaves the Cyclones after resurrecting that program. He's now going to move to State College in the Big Ten and likely take his whole staff, already reports of the defensive coordinator, and likely take many of his players, as many of those players have entered the transfer portal. Now, Iowa State, and they had to do this quickly, but Iowa State, within the hour, named Jimmy Rogers their new head coach. He comes from Washington State. So he was out of the Power Four because of the boot from those teams and the dissolution of what was the Pac-12 and was just for two teams, but wasn't certainly not a Power Four. So Jimmy Rogers, who won an FCS national title, went to Washington State to elevate himself, now elevates himself into power football and in within the Big 12. So he is now going to take over for a Cyclone program that has been pretty good, even though not yet the class of the Big 12, but we'll see what happens to them now into the future. And I guess, Luke, Iowa State has been a program that has been on the rise. Iowa State has been a program that has been a problem for West Virginia. They certainly have been better than West Virginia in recent years. They're not Texas Tech, BYU. They haven't been Kansas State or even TCU if you go back a few years ago. They have Rocco Beck, who has been their quarterback, the son of Anthony Beck, the WVU Sports Hall of Famer. Who knows who's going to be their quarterback or who's going to be on this roster moving forward? But what do you think the departure of Matt Campbell and now the hiring of Jimmy Rogers does for Iowa State, and how does that affect the Big 12? Because this has been a contending team, even if not within that top two or three, that now loses the guy that made this program what it is now. And for a century prior to Matt Campbell, Iowa State was a joke. And they haven't been, but will they be in the future? I guess is the concern now of Cyclone fans.
Well, I think that's one of the big problems with this, right? Is we really don't know how fit Jimmy Rogers is to handle the P4 level, just because, last year was his first, and I mean, it's not even P4, but Washington
Right.
State's in
Yeah.
conference purgatory right now with
Yeah.
everything that's gone on with the Pac-12. But
Yeah.
2 years at South Dakota State, which is, an FCS powerhouse, absolutely don't want to take anything away from that. But after just 1 year at Washington State and going 6-6, I don't know. But it also comes from the fact of this is a really bad coaching search cycle to have your coach leave this late because
Yeah.
Summerall, everybody else from there on down has already been selected. You've already seen a lot of moving around. I mean, James Franklin was at Virginia Tech before the season even ended. So
Yeah.
it's not like
Yeah.
it's not like they had a lot of time or resources to work with here. And it's just one of those things that you're just going to kind of have to roll the dice and see how well it works. I mean, Jimmy Rogers proven at the FCS level, South Dakota State, helped build them into what
Yeah.
they are, and honestly probably kept that ship sailing a little bit, being the head coach there from 2023 to 24.
Yep.
But it's still very, very yet to tell. It's not like you're getting one of these, a G6 coach who's led his team to the conference championship. It's like, no, it's the Washington State head coach who, granted undefeated in the Pac-12 this year, but was 1-0. So, I mean, they beat Oregon State.
Right.
So,
Right.
right. So, coming off a 6-6 record, I don't know, maybe he'll have some players who follow him, but I guess we're just going to have to throw him into the fire right now to see how well he can handle the P4 level of football.
And you also have to wonder, which is what you're kind of bringing up, that if Iowa State would have lost Campbell, say 2 to 3 weeks ago or a month ago, because Penn State was the first coaching vacancy that was open. And they've even had a rule change since theirs became open. And then, James Franklin's already been hired. And now we're seeing, this is why Penn State fans were freaking out. Every job is now getting filled, and they're getting filled with coaches after a solid search. And some programs, Ole Miss in particular, after they lose Lane Kiffin, they did elevate an assistant right away, but it seemed like they had a plan in place in case that would happen. You'd have to imagine Iowa State was aware of Matt Campbell leaving, and he tipped them off to this at least a few days ago once the reports nationally were started circulating. I know it didn't get officialized until tonight here, Friday night, as we're recording this live. And, if you're listening to this in podcast form later, but you imagine he tipped them off prior, at least a couple days, but certainly not weeks, because they were talking to other candidates. They were interviewing other candidates. They were discussing other candidates. They were about to maybe make an offer to other candidates. There were other candidates that they clearly wanted. I mean, Pat Kraft kind of fell backwards into this one here. They had a search that was messed up, and they managed to screw it up and yet land on a really solid hire in Matt Campbell nonetheless. And I even saw a report that they thought of him initially, but there was some confusion on how to get in touch with him and all of that. So if that's true, that would have helped Iowa State. But the point of it is, because it's so late, Iowa State did not have their pick of the litter. Now, obviously, they wouldn't have the pick of the litter in general. It's not like it would be the best open job. But to be fair, based on what Matt Campbell's done at Iowa State, if you were going to rank Iowa State out of all the jobs that have been open, including some of the G5 jobs through the last month, they wouldn't have been last. Like, they would have been at least able to do somewhat of a search here, and maybe Jimmy Rogers will be fine. Obviously, winning at the FCS level is nice, but it doesn't not guarantee to translate. And then, 500 ball to get in a bowl game in Washington State when there's basically no resources there. There's no TV deal. They're not in a conference. It's just a complete catastrophe. That's not bad at all. Like, that's not good for most programs in the power level, but that's not bad there based on what they were dealing with. So maybe that's what Iowa State's banking on. I was always assuming, once I kind of figured this is going to be Matt Campbell at Penn State, that they would just have to elevate an assistant too, kind of like Ole Miss, that, okay, we lose our coach. It's late in the cycle. We can't do a 3-week-long search. So we just elevate somebody. They hire someone from the outside and kind of, they get him out of purgatory and bring him into power ball. I'm sure Jimmy Rogers told him yes before they could even finish the sentence to get me out of Washington State, any power program. I'm sure he would have been thrilled to get that job. But you would have to wonder what type of search Washington or Iowa State could have been able to do if they knew this weeks ago, and Penn State just maybe hired Matt Campbell when this job was open, and probably that when they should have hired him in the first place. The only addition I will add to it, though, and maybe this is part of the problem for Iowa State, and this is how you get glass half empty if you're an Iowa State fan for the future, they also lost their main NIL guy a couple days ago. So they're in some disarray here with the roster, the coaching staff, uncertainty on even the head coach now. And then when they rebuild and get new players, how are they funding that? Who's leading the charge there financially? I mean, I texted somebody within the WVU program about this, even when it was looking like it was going to be Campbell last night. And I literally said to them, isn't this bizarre that within 3 days, Iowa State, that's been a much better program the last 5 years than West Virginia, all of a sudden looks like their future is bleak and West Virginia's is brighter. I mean,
Yeah.
right now, if you're talking about the next 2 or 3 years, it looks like the Mountaineers have a brighter future than Iowa State, and that wasn't the case before. So I think Iowa State right now is on watch that this could be back to what it was. And hey, that opens up the door for West Virginia. Luke Blain, Mike Asti here, Mountaineer Report, West Virginia Sports Now. Again, Iowa State loses their head coach as Matt Campbell goes to Penn State, and that does shake things up for the conference. And again, it would have been interesting if they could do a search, but they couldn't. But that will segue us in now to talk some West Virginia football. We do cover West Virginia, so now back to the program that we cover and how maybe this could affect the Mountaineers, who are coming off of a 2026 class right now that looks to be one of the best in recent memory and still is being built. They're signing players as recently as tonight. They're not done. It's going to be almost 50 players just off the 2026 recruiting cycle of high school and JUCO alone. They'll then go into the transfer portal and maybe even sign some more on the signing period in February. So as we fully unpack this, Luke, and we talked about this before the Thanksgiving holiday about what we were expecting from this class just off the commits. And at that point, it was already a top 25 ranked class. It's there now. They have multiple 4 stars. More could be coming. There are some services and national recruiting services that actually say they have 3 or 4 4-stars, even though most say they only have 2. They got the surprise flip of Matt Sieg, who it looked like he was always going to either Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, or Pitt. That was kind of the order. It seems like Notre Dame kind of pulled away. Virginia Tech didn't guarantee anything to him, and it appears West Virginia outbid Pitt, despite his family wanting him to be close to home. He's only going to travel 45 minutes south from Fort Cherry, Pennsylvania, and come to Morgantown and play for the Mountaineers. Your overlying thoughts on it's impossible, even for the most cynical Mountaineer fan, to not say that Rich Rodriguez's first true high school recruiting class was not a big success.
Yeah, well, I think it's, what I did like about this one was I think they pretty much nailed it on the offensive line with Jonas Muya and Kevin Brown. I think those were 2
Yeah.
really good signings to kind of solidify yourself at the tackle position moving forward on both sides. I
Yeah.
think is big, assuming, they play up to their name and their rating, but I did like the Matt Sieg flip, but a whole lot of 3 stars, things like that. That's where WVU is kind of getting their higher rating, and I think I don't want to say quantity over quality, but there is a
Yeah.
whole lot of players a part of this WVU recruiting class, and if you can coach them well, if you can get them into the system, if you find guys who can come
Yeah.
in and do what they're coached to do, then this could work out. Absolutely could. And I think just getting I feel like Rich Rod's particular way of coaching is good for these guys who want to come in early and then earn their way up. I think
Right.
that hard edge mentality, or however you want to put it, just the way he runs a program is still a little bit old school. So this is, I mean, if he finds the guys that he wants, and looks like he's really going well about the skill positions. There's some defensive backs in there, some wide receivers, some slot guys. Is I think Sieg is a 2-way player, right? Is that?
That's part of the sales pitch. So
Yeah.
he broke a lot of records on offense in high school. It was clear he was going to be safety in college. Penn State was bringing him in as a safety. Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, Pitt, when they were looking at him, it was all about safety. I know for sure Pitt was trying to sell him on being this big-time safety. But I also know from talking to him for now the better part of 2 years when Neil Brown's staff was even recruiting him, and he always was the diamond recruit in Western Pennsylvania, where I'm obviously located, that he always wanted to also get a crack at offense. He played
Yeah.
offense in high school. He didn't want to just totally give it up. He thought maybe he had to give it up to play in college because a lot of colleges thought he was more of a safety. But Rich Rodriguez even said on Tuesday at his post-signing day press conference or Wednesday that he knows Matt C can be a great safety, but he also thinks he can be a productive player on offense too. And I've definitely heard that giving him the opportunity to try on offense as well helped that sales pitch in addition to the money to beat out Pitt when it got down to those two after the others kind of pulled away. So, you know, Rich Rod is a hard-nosed coach. He doesn't guarantee anything to anybody. I'm sure he's going to have to show him he can do it in practice, Luke, but I would certainly imagine he's going to have to at least give Sieg an opportunity to play on both sides of the ball, or else he'd probably lose him in a year, because that was part of the deal here. And this could kind of maybe be what Rodney Gallagher maybe was thought to be and actually have it happen. Because I love Rodney Gallagher, but that really didn't live up to the hype, certainly on both sides of the ball. Maybe this could. I would imagine safety is his number one position, but I would certainly imagine he also gets a chance as a slot receiver, I would guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's some good foundational pieces there. You have a good skill position player, and then your two offensive linemen, you know, and there's obviously more guys on the interior there as well. But I mean, you know, why not just cast as wide of a net as possible and bring as many guys in as you
What
can?
they're doing.
And then I mean, that's what they did last year, and it seems like that's what they're doing again, right? But obviously, probably not to the extent as they did last year. But if you need to cut some guys, that's, you know, Rich Rod doesn't have a problem doing that, you know, as we've seen. So
that's the thing too. I also texted somebody at the program that I'm going to be a little upset here and a little salty when he cuts half of these players that we're all writing about here in the last 2 weeks, because I mean, that's the thing. It's kind of similar to just casting the wide net as last year, but it's a little different in the fact that he's casting the wide net for high school players and even JUCO players that he's looking to develop and cultivate, and then you have to keep them if they're good and try to resign them. Not as much for the transfer players. Doesn't mean he's not going to sign transfer players. He said he's going to sign anywhere from a dozen more. I'd anywhere from 6 to 20 is what I think the number is going to be on a regular basis. And obviously that's a broad number there, but I definitely think we're looking at like a half a dozen to maybe 20. That's probably the most. I cannot, it's not going to be 80 players or 50 players or 60 players in the portal like it was last year. But last year he didn't get to do any high school recruiting. So Neil Brown got fired on December 1. Rich Rodriguez got hired, had his McAfee press conference at the Coliseum on December 20th. Think about that. That's 15 days from when we're recording this show right now. Like, think of you. We're talking about how, I mean, we opened the show talking about how Iowa State is kind of screwed and they couldn't do a search. They hire an uncertain guy. They're going to lose the whole roster, and how late they are in the game in this era. And it's December 5th. West Virginia did not even have the press conference until December 20th last year. So they didn't get to do any of this recruiting that Rich Rod's able to do now. He's well ahead of where he was a season ago. He still needs to do a lot more work, and there's only one transfer portal now. There's not two. So he can't hate everybody in the winter, cut them all after spring ball, and then try to get all new players. That's not going to work this year, of course, because there's not that second portal. But still, this is a little different than casting the wide net that he casted last year. Granted, he's going to probably cut some of these players that he brings in right now. They may even choose to leave after spring ball, because I know last year there were definitely some that got in there, and it was a little too hard edge for them. And they didn't want to hang any longer. That definitely happened with a few. So we will see who's actually on this team. I mean, it's impossible. I'm not going to ask any prediction. It's impossible to predict a record here in December. We don't know the roster. But as far as the December recruiting for his first go at high school recruiting, it's impossible for it not to be a win. Now, as you mentioned, the net has been cast so wide, and there's so many players. I think he's over 45 right now as we're speaking, that it might be a little inflated because you have a few 4 stars. You got close. You were in the conversation. I can report, and I did. I know they were in the running for Chris Henry Jr. Now, you can rank your percentages. I mean, they were in the running, and they finished 3rd or 4th. Did they have a 5% chance, though? It's not like they were in the running probably and really had a shot. They were in the running, though, and they were in the conversation. And then they did get Matt Sieg. They did get Kevin Brown. They got a dual threat quarterback as part of this, too, which is big. A dual threat is what you need to hear when it's Rich Rodriguez. They got several JUCO players that fans may not like them getting JUCO players, but at least for their credit, Luke, when they get JUCO players, they are the top rated JUCO players. So they're getting top 5 rated JUCO players who set records at their level. I mean, other programs, if they get JUCO players, are getting lower tier JUCO players because West Virginia's taking them all. So they're just building up a group of players to then try to evaluate in the spring. And they got some solid other players as well on the D-line, on the offensive line. You mentioned that as well, that being a big deal. A lot of defensive backs, linebackers even. So they're hitting the positions they need to hit, even wide receivers too, even though they didn't get Chris Henne Jr. So they did kind of what they had to do in this recruiting cycle. Does not guarantee they're going to win 7-8 games. Does not guarantee they're going to contend in the Big 12, despite Rich Rod saying that. But I don't know how this class could have been better, I guess. I mean, the West Virginia program is normally a program that recruits in the top 40 in the country, whether it's Rich Rod, Don Nalen, Dana Holgerson, or Neil Brown. They don't get 5 stars. They maybe have, maybe can sprinkle in some 4 stars. Of course, Neil Brown even got Rodney Gallagher. That was a 4-star. They don't always pan out, of course. Some of the best players in program history on the best teams were a nothing star or a 3 or below. So you never know, and you got to rely on the coaching staff to develop them. But with star ratings overrated and recruiting services sometimes not telling you what's actually going to happen on the field, it's hard to say that so far it's not been a success. Again, Luke Blain, Mike Asti here, Mountaineer Report, talking the Big 12 coaching shakeup with Matt Campbell leaving Iowa State and West Virginia football recruiting and the winning week it's been for the Mountaineers off the field in recruiting. Before we fully get more into maybe Chris Henne Jr., because I want to touch more on that, even though they did not win him over and did not bring him in. What do you think pulling Matt Sieg says about the program and the future of this program, and kind of what Ren Baker's saying and Rich Rod's been saying? Maybe they'll even connect the dots here, even being in the running for Chris Henne Jr. They didn't get him, but being in the running. And the financial number that I did hear from some sources was they were going to offer him a financial investment they've never offered any player at any sport ever. I mean, it would have been outrageous. Ohio State and Oregon are probably still paying way more than that. But the fact that they're willing to throw that number at Chris Henne Jr., even to throw the number at him, because if he says yes, you got to be paying it. And they were able to outbid Pitt, even though Pitt has their own financial issues, but that is a direct rival. You are a similar spot to them in recruiting, and you outbid them. What does that tell you about the future of this program? They're coming off a 4-8 season. Everyone's been very, very down on the program, and they just had a 6-year stretch under Neil Brown where they were never ranked in the AP poll. And an NIL bank that Neil Brown said was only $3.5 million, and Texas Tech just spent 20 plus. But I don't know how else to see a tea leaf that this means there's got to be more money to be doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, I was about to say, well, I think having that money gives you more room to swing for the fences when it comes to these recruits, right?
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. Like, Neil Brown wasn't bringing these guys in whenever in year 2, right? So I think we're looking at a major roster turnaround because, like, with this past season, that was the main problem, the roster. And then injuries just whittled down the roster even more. You just had to throw together whatever kind of a team you could going into the season. Like you said, didn't have time to do that high school recruiting. So now really have the opportunity for Rich Rod to put the money where his mouth is, quite literally in this case, where it's, all right, year 1, okay, don't have the time to go about. You don't have the time to take your time, really, when it comes to turning this team around. So it really does, to me, show that they are investing in this football team, and they are investing in the very near future for this team to make an attempt at being a contender for the Big 12 championship. Because that has been, the message this whole time, is that at this time next year, there needs to be talks about WVU being in line to be playing in Dallas, right? That's where the Big 12 championship is, Dallas, correct? So that if that's the conversation, they really are backing it up with making sure this team has the resources to go about it. And wherever that's coming, whether it's, Ken Kendrick, the Pat McAfee show, wherever, I mean, they are getting investors into this team.
Right. Yeah, Dallas, I mean, it's at Jerry World, but you could argue Arlington, Texas, I guess officially.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's the home of the Cowboys, and that's where they want to be for sure. And they didn't get there during the Neil Brown tenure. They didn't get there even during the Dana Holgorsen tenure, coming off of even winning the Orange Bowl. Obviously, it was a different Big 12 then, though, of course. You had Texas and Oklahoma there. It was not this era of football at all, but still they didn't get there then. The program has won 15 conference titles, and that's not arguing claims. That's a fact. They want to win one, though, in the Big 12. That would be a big deal and arguably the best of any conference title that has been won within Mountaineer athletics, certainly the football program. And when you look at Iowa State taking a step back, you look at the rest of the conference, it certainly looks like this year the Big 12 has taken a step forward in their competition against the ACC. It's never going to be the Big 10 and the SEC, but it's against the ACC. I mean, they have a 7-5 team, for crying out loud, competing for their conference title. As much, you're talking about a mess, as much as the mess that is.
The way these games are going, the ACC might not have anybody in the postseason.
The ACC, yeah, they're going to get shut out of the playoff, which was the conversation for the Big 12 last year. Did they deserve anybody? That didn't end up screwing them. This year, it could end up happening to the ACC, and with Clemson being down, Florida State being down, and Miami being good, but not guaranteed to the playoff at all because they're not even in the ACC title game, that the ACC is taking a hit, whereas the Big 12 is now seeing some of their major programs that they want to be good, the Texas Techs, the BYUs of the world, starting to win. They're playing in the Big 12 title game. But another program that I'm sure the Big 12 would prefer to be good is West Virginia. West Virginia is the winningest program in the conference. It has a rabid fan base. It's on national TV all the time. McAfee offers all that promotion. I'm sure the program being good would help the Big 12 conference, and the Big 12 would love to see the program be good. It hasn't happened. They haven't been good enough to be there, but I'm sure this would be great for the conference to have the Mountaineers be a contender. And I'm not ready in any way to predict they're getting to Dallas or Arlington or wherever you want to call it next season. But again, I don't know what else Rich Rod could have done in terms of the 2026 class, in terms of this high school recruiting. I don't see how it could have really been better unless you bring in Chris Henry Jr. I mean, that really would be the only way. I definitely think the fact that they were even in the running, yeah, he's a legacy, but that doesn't mean anything these days, is incredible. Even if they finish third and not second, that is insane. And that's been confirmed by him and even McAfee. People don't want to believe it, but it's just the case. And then getting Sieg, I mean, those additions even more, because Kevin Brown, we've talked about it. Kevin Brown was great, but that could have been argued as an isolated incident if it just was one offensive lineman with a dad that played for Rich Rod, and then everybody else was a 3-star or below, and nothing that was on national, on any national headline. We even said like that would be good, but that would show that it's just an isolated incident. Don't schedule a parade. To get Matt Sieg, and then to be in the running for Chris Henry Jr., and there were a couple, Vincent Smith, there were some other players that are arguing for 4 stars that they might become 4 stars. If you listen to certain recruiting services, Luke, they may end up with 4 to 5 4 stars, which would be outrageously crazy for West Virginia football recruiting. They usually get one every 4 years, let alone 4 in one class. So that has to be a good sign, and it's a good sign financially, because as I always say, and some fans don't want to hear this because they just care about the program, kids don't go to a school for the school. Even if they love West Virginia and they're a legacy, maybe they're from the region, doesn't matter. They go to a school for the coaching staff, which is why when these coaches leave or get fired and bring in new coaches, usually you see a mass exodus, or purely money. They don't care who's the damn coach. They just want some money. If you're willing to match the money, they'll stay regardless of the coach. That is some players. Rich Rod doesn't want those guys, but that exists. And maybe they're selling him on the coaching staff and developing them into better players, and Rich Rod being a borderline Hall of Fame guy and Zach Alley a great defensive coordinator. Maybe that's why they're coming. But they also got to be getting some money or they wouldn't be there. Certainly Kevin Brown and Matt Sieg, despite Kevin Brown being a legacy and Matt Sieg growing up close in Fort Cherry, they wouldn't be there for free. They're not there for free. Breaking news. They're not there for free. So if it was only $3.5 million in the NIL bank, they wouldn't be able to bring those 2 guys in because those 2 guys would be taking up like 60% of that money. They wouldn't be able to build a team. They have to have more. So we don't have the official reporting from anyone yet. We're still in December for next year. But That's all you got to know that there's more. Has to be. Or else they're going to, or we're going to have a scandal that they're defaulting on all of this promised money because they're definitely offering the kids more money.
Yeah.
And I will throw this out there. I have heard that they're trying to offer some 2-year deals instead of 1-year deals, and basically telling kids that if you kind of commit to us to stay for 2 years, we'll give you this. And say, for example, it's 500K over 2 years instead of just 1 year, to be able to drag that out. There's not official contracts in place these days, but if they can pull that off, that would be pretty smart because then they'll be able to kind of put off payments, but maybe hit it big this year. And it definitely appears like they're trying to win the Big 12 next year. Like they're going for it right away. We'll see if it happens, and we'll see who they retain on the current roster. We'll see who they want to retain on the current roster, and then we'll see what the team looks like after spring ball. Luke Blain, Mike Asti here, Mountaineer Report, West Virginia Sports Now. And Luke, that kind of leads me to bring something up that we didn't get to talk about because it happened in the final game of the regular season, and then, of course, the Thanksgiving holiday. And people probably didn't care as much as maybe, I saw former players really, really cared about this, but some may have missed it because it was 49-0, and it was the worst home loss since 1891 when they lost 70-0 in year one of the program, as insane as that sounds. But if you didn't see, Cam Vaughn didn't really look hard edge at all. His effort was pretty low. Didn't even turn around on an interception, even try to put an effort in to try to stop that return. Didn't even run out routes. I had former current coaches, I'll tell you, that I was texting with, that it was all kinds of just really disappointed in Cam Vaughn's effort there. And then even hearing other things within the program that he's not really been the best to be around, I'll say. I know for sure, I will say, there are not coaches, but there are people within the program that would love to see him go because they're just not enjoying being around the man. What does that tell you about how many players we maybe are going to be returning from the current 2025 team? Do you think Cam Vaughn maybe will be a player that might surprise some and be kind of told to leave, maybe? Or maybe he'll choose to leave. He was always a Rich Rod guy from Jack State, but it doesn't appear it's a guarantee that he's coming back next year right now. And maybe they're redoing this all together again. I would think for the best of the program, they would need to bring some of those current guys back for some chemistry. But what do you make of the Cam Vaughn rumor mill and that conversation that's been going on the last week and a half for fans and the possibility that he's not back?
Yeah, well, I saw the clip of him not turning around on the interception was shared several times, so I did
Yeah.
see that part of the game. I didn't look at it close enough to see him to be able to comment on his route running or anything like that. And obviously,
Yeah.
I'm not in the locker room. I can't tell, I can't really, vouch too much for what's going on there. But assuming that is true, just to say,
Right.
well, I'll speak hypothetically here. You'd have to imagine that Rich Rod has a problem with that. I mean, as much as Rich Rod is a mentality chemistry guy, he's going to want players who match that intensity, match that chemistry,
Yeah.
and match that mentality that he wants with the football team. And the characteristics that you at least have heard about doesn't match that. So now you're just going to have to see, because I mean, he is an incredibly talented wide receiver.
Yeah.
And, if he can just put it together, I think he has a chance to be a great Big 12 wide receiver, assuming he stays. But it also just shows, I mean, he is a young player on a team that didn't have a very good first season. And not even that, it was just there were some games where they just flat out were not competitive in. So, like, you go back and you look at Utah, you look at, BYU, somewhat competitive most of the
Yeah.
way, but then you just get shellacked at home by Texas Tech. It's,
Yeah.
I granted, a lot of those guys are probably feeling the same frustration. Maybe they're doing a better job of keeping it to themselves, but I'm sure that that situation brings out a lot of emotions and a lot of things of that nature.
Yeah.
I know Rich Rod did say earlier in the season that he does need to work on his route running, that there are issues like that. And I mean, he's got the physical build, he's got the makeup to be a really good college receiver. So
Yeah.
I don't know. But I mean, if it is true, and I'll just take it with a grain of salt, but maybe you could see him on the move. I mean, Rich Rod, I know the talk has been, West Virginia is his last stop. I'm sure he probably doesn't want to waste too much time with guys that don't fit the mentality of this team.
I think the mentality of the team and building the culture is very, very important to Rich Rod. I mean, people are going to see and hear, oh, this is a very talented player. He's arguably one of the most talented players from the 2025 team. And for a while, Luke, he was the one player fans were loving watching, even when they were getting blown out. He was at
Yeah.
least entertaining because he would at least have a chance in 50-50 balls. There was a while where people were joking that, and we talked about this in the press box, the best offensive play for the team, just chuck it deep to Cam Vaughn and see what happens. You might get a pass interference in your favor, or he'll catch it, or maybe it's a pick, but two of those three are actually in your favor. Try that. And now we get to the end of the year where this team actually ends up with a couple solid victories. They only go 4-8. They get embarrassed in the final game of the regular season. It's a bad year. But even when the offense starts to pick it up under Scotty Fox and looks better in the last weeks of the season, he doesn't actually do that much more. If you've noticed, even before this drama, Scotty Fox was getting better. The offense was getting better. Cam Vaughn was the leading receiver, but he wasn't doing anything more. And it was still, he'd have 2 or 3 catches, but he would have 7 or 8 targets and only bring in 2 or 3 balls. And that's what Rich Rod was even alluding to that you mentioned there in the middle of the season. And I asked him the question, because we talked about it even here. How do you unlock Cam Vaughn more to try to spark plug this offense, even before Scotty Fox was there? And Rich Rod's response was what you were saying. It's not up to us to unlock him. He's not, he's not a perfect player. He's messing up on routes. He's doing this, and this wrong. I thought it was kind of odd at the time that he kind of was so open negatively about a player. Because one of the first things Rich Rodriguez told us in the media when he came back is, I'm a little different man than I was. The one thing I'm always going to do, no matter how good or bad we are, is I'm not going to throw my players under the bus to you guys. Don't even try to bring that out of me, or we're going to have a contentious relationship. And then he does it on his own, and I wasn't trying to bring it out of him. So, again, I'm not in there. I'm not having lunch with the man. I'm just saying what I've heard from people maybe that are. However, when you see Rich Rod outwardly offering his critiques of a player, then you see the clip of him not turning around on the pick. Then you watch the game again and see that he's not really running those routes out. Then I have coaches telling me the same thing because obviously their eye is better than mine. And then you have fans totally out on Cam Vaughn. Again, I wouldn't be shocked if he's not back next year. Now, from a strictly football perspective, they didn't bring in Chris Henry Jr. If you lose Cam Vaughn, you need to bring in some wide receiver help in the transfer portal because, number one, they got to win and got to contend, and that's the most important thing. Rich Rod wants to put the culture in place, and maybe that you need to get these locker room vampires out. But if he doesn't contend in the Big 12 during the tenure within these first few years, he might not last throughout the whole contract. And, just because he doesn't want to be around Cam Vaughn, that might not be a good reason if he's helping them win on the field. Can they replace him is the biggest question on the field. That would be a major question. And if they're parting ways with him and if they feel they can bring somebody else in that is at least him or better. And they need more than one receiver. Obviously, that was a problem last year that they just had one guy. And then if he's double covered, they couldn't really move the ball.
Yeah, I think that is the biggest question is, that was the thing that came into my head whenever hearing about, fans being like, yeah, get him out of here, want somebody who will turn around on the interception.
Right.
It's like, well, who else right now? I mean, I think is Jaden Bray still in the process of trying to get the waiver for another year? Is that happening, or I can't?
So that's
I remember
as far as I
hearing
know,
it was
that's
happening.
as far as I know, that's a possibility, but it's not definitely occurring. And
Yeah,
the same thing
so
with on a different note to bring that up, Jeff Weimer maybe could come back again and have another year's availability because he had JUCO time in his career. So that
yeah.
hasn't been finalized yet. And he did say that he's interested, but he doesn't know what that's going, what the resolution is going to be. So if that opens up and the JUCO players win that case, he then can come back. But
Yeah. I mean, if that's the case, you're going to have to rely, if assuming, if the transfer portal could totally change the outlook of the offense,
Right.
depending on who they get. But you didn't have anybody who had the burners like Cam Vaughn. You didn't have somebody who could just run a
Yeah.
straight line and get open like Cam Vaughn.
Yeah.
So that's what you're looking at there. But also with how much that Rich Rod likes to run the ball in this offense, and you'll have some guys healthy again next year. I mean, you can't forget about Ty Edwards, and assuming Jaheim White still sticks around,
Yeah.
you have to imagine that the running game is going to be even more poised for success, especially with the changes that they're making to the offensive line. And maybe they'll be able to have some of those short routes open up. But Cam Vaughn was one of the better guys on the team who could get the ball in the flat and make a guy miss and go get an extra 7, 8 yards. You're just kind of weighing the pros and cons of keeping him versus not keeping him at that point. And we're just going to have to see which way they go and what the offense looks like ahead of next season.
Yeah, and Cam Vaughn had 35 receptions, 541 yards, 4 touchdowns, an average of 15.5 per. All numbers down from what he did at Jacksonville State. 48 catches, 803 yards, 16.7 on an average, and 5 touchdowns with a 75-yarder as his longest, only a 46-yarder being his longest catch as a Mountaineer. Now, again, to be fair, obviously that is Conference USA versus the Big 12, but a noticeable dip for him, and he still was by far the number one receiver for the Mountaineers, and he certainly has eligibility left. And you would imagine that even if you're going to progress with Scotty Fox, or say you bring in a veteran quarterback, which I still believe they're going to do, and Richard kind of alluded that they're going to do that. Number one, that's money they're going to have to spend in the portal. So if you lose Cam Vaughn, you got to then spend more money to bring in a wide receiver. Now, they didn't get Chris Henry Jr., so you would imagine that any of the money they're going to offer Chris Henry Jr., they still got available. They didn't spend it. They didn't give it to him. So that should be there for the portal and for other guys. And maybe you need to replace Cam Vaughn. I think the issue is Cam Vaughn might not be a Chris Henry Jr. type or a Marvin Harrison Jr. type when he was at Ohio State to go ahead and win a conference title or beyond. He might not be that level guy, but if you're going to win a conference championship, you're probably better suited to have somebody else come in to be that guy and have him still be there. Have multiple receivers who are game breakers. But the guys who maybe could stay, the Jeff Weimer, if he gets eligibility to stay, the Jane Bray, a veteran, even if he can come back and do one more year because of the injuries, or even Ronnie Gallagher coming back, and Preston Fox obviously is now done. They're either slot guys or they're just not the game breakers of Cam Vaughn. So you mentioned it. A burner that can go down the sideline, win a 50-50 ball, and beat the defender down there and take the top off the defense. The only guy on the roster right now is Cam Vaughn. And even if you look to the recruits, maybe some are fast. None of them are like Cam Vaughn exactly. And they're freshmen. Cam Vaughn has been in the system. He's been with Rich Rod for multiple years. It's almost like someone needs to get to Cam Vaughn and say, man, you're really screwing this up. Like, you're the guy that should be getting better. Just stop doing the wrong thing that is clearly pissing off Rich Rod. And it would even be great for you to still be the number one on this team or be a receiver on this team. Because is he going to get another Power 4 opportunity if Rich Rod casts him off because he's a jerk? Like, I don't know, and doesn't run out route to turn around. Other coaches are seeing that too. Those numbers do not scream big money in the portal. And his big success was at Jack State. So what is his value on the open market? I think he needs to think about too. Is he going to be at a better spot than under Rich Rod in this offense? Is it his decision? We will find out if Rich Rod's pretty much in these exit meetings that happened over the weekend and are still going to finish out this weekend. Maybe they told him, look, man, we're not with you anymore. You need to leave. We haven't seen the announcement from him as we're recording this, but it would no longer shock me. And I think before the Texas Tech game, I kind of always assumed he'd be somebody that would come back. He's a Rich Rod guy. He's still young. He's the best player on the team. At least he was for a while. But you see that film, and then you start asking people, what's really been going on? Is this isolated or what's been going on? And you get a lot of, this is the same. This is what's been going on. He's not really a hard edge guy. Look at other film. He does this all the time. You remember what Rich Rod said. He doesn't always bring the ball in. The targets are there, but the catches are less. Is he running out routes on a regular basis? You get into all of that. And then maybe you think, oh, maybe Cam Vaughn's not going to be back. We will see. that'll certainly change things of the dynamic of this roster overall, despite the recruiting success. Luke Blain, Mike Asti here, Mountaineer Report, West Virginia Sports Now. And I guess we will pivot into now. Mentioned you're going to go back to Charleston to cover West Virginia in a game they kind of need to win because they need to start picking up some quality victories here for the metrics. They're a winning team. They now are at full strength, but the net rankings aren't impressed. Ken Palm's a little more impressed, but not that impressed. And the Pitt win, despite destroying them, doesn't look that great. And I actually even said to a mutual friend of ours, we both appear on Alex Wiederspiel's show, that because the Pitt win is no longer heralded as a quality win, and Pitt is worse off in the metrics, and Pitt beat Ohio State, that game in Cleveland against Ohio State has now become a must win. But before that, you also got to get a quality win to get a couple of them before Big 12 play. A lot of pressure now on this remaining December schedule before 2026. Where are you on the prospects of this team and the possibility of making the NCAA tournament before you get into Big 12 play, based on where they are now in the metrics, based on what you've seen from this team, and based on these games coming up? Because now the committee is basically saying they have 0 quality wins despite a handful of victories overall.
Yeah, well, I think you're absolutely right. And I was talking to Alex about this last night as well on his show, is that it doesn't help that Coppin State is number 364 in Ken Palm, and number 365 is coming to Morgantown in a week. It's Mississippi Valley State. So I mean, it's not like you have, like in the Huggins era, where you had those non-conference wins that could help uplift you into the tournament, even
Yeah.
if you don't do particularly well in Big 12 play.
Yeah. Or even last
It-
year. I mean, DeVries had
yeah,
them.
exactly.
DeVries had the Gonzaga victory. That was a major deal before getting into Big
Yeah.
12 play. That really helped them in the metrics. That win
Yeah.
isn't there so far yet this year.
Yeah. So I think looking at Wake Forest, and I think Wake Forest is a team that has a chance to be very good. So this could be a good way to measure out how WVU actually is in this point in the season. They're finally at full strength. They have Jackson Fields and Chance Moore in there, and I do like the way that both of them have played a whole lot. I think they came in and made an instant impact on this team.
Right.
But in terms of where I think this team is right now, I think, to tell the truth, I have to wait till tomorrow. I have to be able to wait and see how they handle
That's fair.
Wake Forest, because I think they're going up against an NBA caliber player in Juke Harris, who is a guard standing at 6'7". He's averaging 19.9 points per game and just over 7 rebounds. I mean, the kid is crazy. Like, what he's doing so far in this season is nuts. And Wake Forest has a chance to be a very good ACC team. So what the curious part is, who's going to step up and guard him? Being a 6'7" guard, you may see Eagle Staff on there. And Hodge has talked very highly of his defensive effort, but that's just going to be something we have to see tomorrow. But this is the first real test of a fully healthy and fully available team. So I think tomorrow is going to be the real telling point of where this team is, because you can't. I would label both Wake Forest and Ohio State as must wins, just because you need to have some of those quad 2 victories going into conference play. Because just where this team is right now, I don't see them having the Big 12 conference record to help uplift them if you don't go in there with any quality wins.
Yeah.
I just don't see it as of now. And I've been high on this team. I think this team has very high potential. I think it could be, I'm hesitant to say this, I think it could be a Big 12 contender if they played to their potential, but they're just not doing that yet. So there's a lot to be seen about the rest of the season and just where this team can go.
And also, to lose to Clemson the way you did, blowing that game, and then you lose to Xavier as well. But if you split those games and you at least had the Clemson win, which the way they were playing for 90% of it, that should have been a victory. That would make you feel a little better about the resume. I don't know exactly what it would do in the metrics, and I'm not saying Clemson's going to the Final Four or anything like that, but it would make you feel a little bit better. Even if Clemson's not a quality win, it certainly, maybe that wouldn't be a quad 1, maybe it'd be a quad 2 win. But even if it wasn't a quad 2 win, it would at least make you feel better. It would make you feel better. But the reason why these are must wins certainly Ohio State, but even Wake Forest, really. I mean, you're at home, you're in West Virginia. You could argue that's even more of a must win because at least Ohio State is on the road in Ohio, even though it's not in Columbus, it's in Cleveland. And if you want to compare it to Pitt beat them on a buzzer beater at home in Pittsburgh. So you could have a little excuse if you lose a close game on the road in Cleveland, but you can't lose in West Virginia. That's going to be a 99.9% West
No.
Virginia crowd. There might be some Wake Forest fans that drive in for the cool experience, but it's going to be really a West Virginia crowd there. I mean, maybe some Marshall fans will go just to hate on the situation, but it's most likely a WVU crowd. So that got to be a game that you impress. And you also now have your full strength. That's what Ross Hodge has been harping on, that now we have the full strength. He's even said, literally, we feel like we're only 2 games into the season because it's only been 2 games at full strength. I think somebody needs to tell him, Luke, that unfortunately, that's not how this works. And his every game he has played does count. But even if they're 2 games into the season, the 2 games they've played at full strength, they're not providing them an opportunity to impress anybody. I mean, playing Mercyhurst, playing those teams doesn't do anything. It's the same thing that the women turn around after a losing skid and blast Mercyhurst by 40 points. It's not even on the radar of anybody. You have to have those games on the schedule. Everybody plays those games. Everyone in the country plays those games. But you also got to get enough quality wins to make up for playing those games and even for losses that are now on the board. And it just is funny that was my first thought when Pitt beat Ohio State is, man, this is now a must win. Whereas prior, it might be a swing game that you can get over because it's in Cleveland. But you beat Pitt by 30 and then you lose to a team they beat. That just doesn't look good. That doesn't feel good. Like that's going to be a situation that you got to somehow drive to Cleveland. You got to get in the car. You got to go 2 hours and you got to somehow pick up that victory. That is going to be the opposite of the Wake Forest atmosphere, though. You have to imagine that that's 90% going to be Buckeye fans because there's there's, Cleveland State and Cleveland schools, but there's no Power 4 team in Cleveland. People that live in Cleveland or from Cleveland that are Ohio State fans unless they happen to go to college somewhere else. So that's going to be all against them as well there, but they're going to have to somehow pull it off. And it's not like Ohio State's not able to be beat, nor is Wake Forest not able to be beat, but West Virginia has not always played to their best, even when they're at full strength and even having the potential to do so. Do you at all find it interesting? Because before our show hiatus and before the holiday season, if you recall, that Ross Hodge was getting annoyed by Eagle staff not scoring, me asking about it, then bringing it up when I wasn't even there, and then to Eagle staff and Ross Hodge's credit, the game right after that, and then really every game since, Eagle staff has been way better, and he's been scoring, and he had a 20-point game, and he's been more involved in the offense, and he's shooting more. He's kind of doing what I said. He's taking more shots, and he's finally hitting some. However, the team is playing worse even while he's playing better. Is that a coincidence for you? Is that ironic for you? I mean, how would you describe Eagle staff finally has been unlocked and feels like he's in a rhythm, but this team is not really better off for it? Doesn't mean that they can't be, but what is the recipe for this team to be at its best?
Well, I think for the team to be at its best, you have to have the 1-2 punch of Trace and Eagle staff and Honor Huff. I think that is just flat out what needs to happen. That's what's going to open up players like, Lorient and Obioha down low. And even, we did see how Jasper Floyd can go out there and make some shots and, help the team to a win.
Yeah.
But when you look at Eagle staff recently, I would honestly argue that the team has played moderately better since the Charleston Classic.
Okay.
Eagle staff didn't have the game you really wanted him to have against Clemson. That's another one of those games where, I mean, early on you can excuse it. You can excuse it to him, figuring out his way in the offense. But it really is glaring when against Clemson he goes 2 for 9 and 1 for 5 from 3. Obviously, there were way more problems than just him in that game. Honestly, the entire team's play as a whole, I would argue, was a bit more staggering in that one. But going
Yeah.
into the next one, I mean, he scored 20 against Xavier, but Xavier also shot 16 of 25 from three. So, I mean, I just don't know. I mean, it is a case of what are you supposed to do against that?
Yeah,
To
no,
me,
100%. Yeah.
looking at that game.
Yeah.
So then
Well, that's why you got to win the
Mercyhurst,
Clemson game. Like you can punt
yes,
that game, but that you can tip your
yeah,
cap and say they just shot the lights out with Xavier. But if you had the
yeah.
Clemson win, that wouldn't be as big of a deal.
Exactly. And then, well, then you're not even playing
Well,
Xavier
then
if you beat
you're
Clemson.
technically not
So it's
playing them. Yeah,
also like,
that's also fair. Yeah.
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 And honestly, if they could have carried that momentum, I could have seen them beating Georgia as well. I
Right.
mean, there was a real time at that, like, looking at the season where I did think that this team could go undefeated going into conference play. Obviously, that's out the window
I mean, at
now.
least going into that tournament, the way those teams are playing going into that tournament, it would not have been crazy to say West Virginia could have won that tournament.
Yeah.
Going into that tournament, Georgia, Xavier, Clemson, those teams, nobody terrified you. It's not like last year where you had Gonzaga in there, who West Virginia did beat in that out of conference tournament. It could have been an opportunity to win out of conference tournament. And if you win an out of conference tournament with Power Four competition in the tournament, no matter who they are, that would really boost you in the metrics. They'd probably be 20 spots higher right now. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, winning it is a high bar, but they do 0-2. They didn't do anything in there. So that really
Mm.
hurt them. That's why that even after destroying Pitt, they haven't been able to really. It took them 2.5 weeks. I think you wrote in one of your Ken Palm updates. It's taken them 2 weeks to get back to where they were after the Pitt win. Like that's really what it's been. Like they had to do a lot of this work to just get back to where they were. They pretty much blew the effort against Pitt in a way.
No, absolutely. I think that's absolutely correct. But, and then Mercyhurst Coppin State
Yeah.
going 4 for 9 in both of those games, but he really let it fly from three against Coppin State. I mean, 3 of 8 from 3-point range. And that aggressiveness is what you need. And
Yeah.
honestly, that's how you get him scoring is you let him shoot. Just let it
Yeah.
fly. I think
He
that's,
wasn't doing in the
that
beginning
is
of
the
the
major
season.
thing.
At the
Yeah.
beginning of the season, he had 1 or 2 shots in some of those games. You cannot do that
Yeah.
when you're a shooter. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just, I mean, he didn't go 5 of 14 in that game against Campbell, but I mean, I'm
Right, right, right.
seeing
That's the one.
like,
That was the only double-digit scoring in the first 5 games, I believe, off the top of my head.
yes. Yeah. Because in the other ones, he's shooting 3 times, 4 times, two
Yeah.
times. And it's just, and it's not really something that I can put my finger on. It's not really something that I can fully diagnose, at least to
Yeah.
what's going on in his head. But, talking about Russ Hodge saying how he's seen shooters that come into his offense and have to get their legs under him because of how hard he asked them to work on defense. I think that's a valid excuse for one of those situations early in the season.
Sure. Yeah,
And
yeah.
then going down the line. But I mean, you also have to look at it. He is playing hard defense. Like he
That's
he he
true.
absolutely is helping on that side of the ball. He's getting
Yeah.
rebounds. He really attacked the paint against Xavier. That's where a lot of those 20 points came from. So he actually didn't make a three against Xavier. He went 8 of 15 from the field,
Yeah.
no for 5 from three. So
It just sucks for him to score 20 points and not win. Like that just
yes.
seems like if you're going into a game and you're West Virginia and someone tells you Eagle staff scores 20, you got to be getting the victory. And if you don't,
Yeah.
something crazy went down, and it's maybe because the opponent shot all those 3-pointers and scored all those points late. But still, I'd imagine that's how Ross Hodge is losing sleep if he does not make the tournament. We had a 20-point night from Eagle staff, and we did not win against a Power 4 competition.
Yeah.
That cannot happen if you want to get in the tournament because you're assuming that you're assuming you're going to lose Big 12 games. You're going to win some, but you're assuming you're going to lose some. A good Big 12 record would be barely over 500. There are teams that barely do that make the tournament because the conference is so stacked and so respected. And that is one of the benefits of being in the Big 12. And Huggins got in the tournament a few years ago off of the Big 12 being so great that Huggins was below 500 in conference play and made the tournament one year because he had quality victories from the out of conference schedule to make up for his metrics. But you need to get those.
Yeah.
If you lose to Wake Forest and Ohio State, you probably need 10 Big 12 victories.
Yeah.
And that sounds crazy to think could occur.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. I think like just to say it like to summarize it, I think my attitude toward Eagle staff right now is he's not playing near as bad as anybody thinks he is.
That's
I
fair.
think as an overall player, the basketball is much more than scoring.
Yeah.
But he's not doing what you brought him in to do,
Yeah,
which
people
is
think of him as a
shoot
scorer,
it.
though.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Which is shooting at a high volume, scoring a lot of points. And then, I mean, he is, nobody complained whenever Toby Okani was having these kind of stat lines last
Yeah.
season, but you didn't bring Trace and Eaglestaff in to be a Toby Okani, who brought him in to
That's
be
that's
that
it.
almost
Yeah.
20-point per game scorer that he was at North Dakota last year.
Right.
But, we're going to be able to better diagnose it. I think just what the issue is after Wake Forest and Ohio State. I think the best thing that could happen for Trace and Eagle staff would be for him to score 20 and the team beat Wake Forest tomorrow. But that I
That would
think
be
that would put
nice.
a
Yeah.
lot. I think that would be
Yeah.
put a lot of fans to rest in terms of their worries about him as a player and as a performer. But I don't know. We're just going to have to wait and see until tomorrow, then, and then next Saturday with Ohio State.
And we also have yet to see Honor Huff and Trace and Eaglestaff both at their
Yeah.
best offensively, not just in general, because they have to do more in a Ross Hodge team. We have not
Right.
seen both of them clicking offensively and win. That's the thing.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
the only and it's isolated to only a few games right now with them being at full strength, and the Xavier game was just one game, and the opponent did score a lot and hit a lot of threes. So even Ross Hodge kind of said you tip your cap there, but we're going to really see in these future games, and certainly in Big 12 play, that if they can't guarantee to get victories when those two are at their best, or they can't have both of them click together. Because Ross Hodge did even bring up earlier in the season that it's sometimes hard for a player like Eaglestaff to find his shots because he didn't want to throw anyone under the bus. But he basically was saying that on the team he was on last year, there was nobody like him there to take those shots. But now he has
Yeah.
other players that can get those shots, Honor Huff in particular, but even others. But if that's an issue moving forward, we're going to find that out as well. That can they both find a way to get enough shots for both of them to score on the same night and then also play sound defense? That's a team that would get you into the NCAA tournament. But they're the two best players. Eaglestaff was brought in to be the scorer. He scored 51 points in the game last year. He scored 40 points against Bama. That's a great team. He obviously has the ability to score. Finding the rhythm on this team is different. And yes, he's playing defense, but as you put it, even if he's playing well as a basketball player, he's getting paid to score. So if he ends up with a final stat line to end the year, averaging 6 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists, that's fine for a role player. That's not going to be successful for somebody getting paid the money that Trace and Eaglestaff is getting paid, who came aboard to be the leading scorer. It just isn't. Period. And we're going to really see moving forward if that gets corrected or if it ends up being a problem. Luke Blain, Mike Asti here, Mountaineer Report, talking some basketball. We're going to wrap up the show, but before we do, and I don't want to make this a whole segment, but before we do, I would be remiss if I didn't ask, and I guess I can simply ask this, Luke. And yeah, they got a big win over Mercyhurst, but what's been going on with the women's team? What's been going on with the women's team? They've almost found a way, talking about taking away quality victories, they've almost found a way to make people forget what they did against Duke and winning that game undermanned or underwomaned and having that Disney movie of a story. They're finding a way to make people forget that. And they got destroyed. We had Griffin Floyd they're actually covering. They got destroyed by Villanova. They didn't just get upset. They got destroyed. They were never in the game. They lost at home for only the third time under Mark Kellogg. By far his worst loss for his entire Mountaineer tenure. There were big-time recruits there. Griffin Floyd told me they were serving shrimp scampi to recruits who watched them lose, what was it, 35-40? I mean, they got blasted in that game. How the hell does that happen? And what is going on with this team? Because even before that, they were starting to show signs of weaknesses there. It's making people start to argue the Duke win was a weird Disney movie and an aberration, and this team is really not that great.
It's a great question. It really is. I can't, you know, I'm trying to look
I
down
mean,
the
they
line.
don't
I
deserve
mean,
to be ranked
shoot, they
anymore
I
for
mean
sure. They certainly don't
they
deserve a
won
ranking.
they won the rebounding battle. I'm really just I'm also at a loss as I mean, they didn't take very many shots from outside. They only took 10. The Villanova went 8 for 20 from beyond the arc, so I think you could probably point to that a little bit, lack of opportunities from outside.
81-59. 81-59. Man.
81-59. I mean, I have to tell the truth and say
They
I
did the
didn't get
same
the
thing.
chance.
They had the same thing happen to them that they did to Mercyhurst.
Yeah,
I mean, that shouldn't be happening to them against another power opponent.
yeah.
And they lost to Ohio State before that, even though that was a close game. But they were lucky to still be ranked when they went into that Villanova game. And they got exposed and they played awful. And there's no way they're ranked now.
No, no, they won't be ranked after this one for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Villanova is a team that's had a solid season up to that point. I think they were 5-2
Sure.
going into that game,
Sure.
so it's not like I don't. It'll be really interesting to see what Villanova does the rest of the season.
Yeah. Root like
But
hell for them if you're a Mountaineer fan because they got
oh
it.
yeah,
I mean, they
yeah.
have to end up absolutely a tournament team or that's going to look horrible. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, WVU failed to score 20 in any of the quarters. So I think like scoring definitely a problem. I mean, well, if you're losing, scoring's absolutely a problem. I don't want to be
Right.
redundant, but it's also, I mean, how many players do they have who can have that high scoring volume like JJ Quinterly used to have? I I'm not trying to call any of them into question. Maybe they just haven't figured out who to have take what shots quite
I
yet.
guess.
But
But
you do have Jordan Harrison still there. She can still be there, dish the ball. It's not like with the men's team where you have an entirely new roster. They still have plenty of depth pieces there.
yeah, and what
I,
you
c-
were even saying after the Duke game that it kind of showed that they don't have a WNBA player, but they have a better overall group because they have more
yeah,
players that can get double digits in scoring. Now it looks like maybe they actually have a whole team of role players, and that's not that great. Like you need somebody to carry the load if you have all the down night. It can't be all role players. And yeah, they beat Duke, but it looks like maybe they do have a team of all role players. Again, I could see getting upset, even if they
yeah,
lose to Villanova. That is a good team. I can see that. Griffin actually said before he went down to Morgantown because he picked up a press pass from me. We talked about it. He actually thought that Villanova maybe could. I think he said they could be a sneaky team that maybe could upset him. But he even said probably not get the win in Morgantown, but make it close. He was expecting them to make it close, and nobody made it close because they won going
yeah,
away. That is what can't happen. That
yeah.
that just cannot happen. And Mark Kellogg, I think I might even have texted you. He almost seemed like he wasn't angry enough after the game. And I am not saying he's not upset, but it almost seemed like it was just he was almost at a loss before he could even get mad. Like
Yeah.
that should never happen to lose that bad.
Well, I think that's the natural response in a game like that, right? I think
Yeah.
like because I had a friend who it was his first event coverage there, and he was on that game, and he was texting me. He was like, "What is going on?" I mean, I can't like I really
Bad luck,
and
man.
as
Yeah.
somebody who could as somebody who didn't watch the game, truthfully, I wasn't able to have it
Right.
on that night, but I the best thing I can say is that it feels way out of character for the team to lose like that on their home court. I
Right.
mean, they had that crazy streak of home games that they had won. They went undefeated at home last year. So to come out and
Yeah.
then just have that happen this season, I can't really put a finger on it as to why that can happen. Maybe it's a fluke, and maybe you get into Big 12 play and
Mhm.
you don't have that bad of a performance against anybody else, and maybe this was just a bad night. I don't know. We don't really have the full sample size of games for the rest of the year to be able to say that.
No, but
But
what's coming up though? I mean, how many quality wins are coming up? They have Texas Southern; they're going to destroy them. You would imagine. They have Georgia Tech. These are not ranked teams. Georgia Tech, even though they're power, Texas A&M, who was down last year.
yeah,
Houston. Then you're getting into Big 12 play now. Houston, Kansas, Kansas State. They're not going to play a fellow ranked team, at least going off of what the poll was last week, until January 11th against Iowa State, and then January 14th against TCU. So before that, they should get some wins. But the problem is, Luke, which is kind of what we said with the men's team after losing some games after the Pitt win, how many opportunities are there for them to get quality victories to now help their metrics that have now sunk before getting into Big 12 play, which even as great as the women's team has been in recent years, you're not going to go undefeated there either. So if you're going to lose some Big 12 games, I mean, this does not even seem like a reach now. The women's team has to go undefeated the rest of this month. Like they got to run through the rest of this month. You would imagine at minimum, they got to win before getting into Big 12 play. And Big 12 play on the women's side does start on December 21st. So it is earlier than the men's that does not start until January 1, I believe. But still, at the very least, you got to beat Georgia Tech. You got to beat Texas A&M. And you probably got to start winning some Big 12 games to make up for. It's not just a loss again. To lose the way you lost, if they end up with a seed line that they don't like, I don't want to hear anything now, because that's exactly how you can go to an 8 or a 9 or a 10 seed, assuming they're still a tournament team, of course. But, and I'm not saying they're going to go ahead and lose 6 in a row and not be a tournament team, but we were talking on the last show, can they host? That seems like that is out unless they get some top 10 victories.
Yeah. Well, because you do have the Ohio State loss on a neutral court in there, and that's a solid team. That's the thing. It's those backbreakers when it comes to seeding and things like that are those losses against those teams that you're supposed to be neck and neck with, even a little bit ahead of. And that hurt them a couple years ago whenever I think there were losses to Baylor. I know that they had that collapse there at the very end, and that's why you saw them getting a 9 seed and having to go to Iowa.
Even last year, they were upset about seed wise, but they had some bad losses before the Big 12 play, and then the Colorado game, and I mean
exactly. Yeah, I mean they started out with one with Colorado last season. Yeah. Like they started Big 12 play with a loss to Colorado, which never should have happened. So I don't know. You'd have to hope that this Big 12 schedule can favor them, which I think to a degree it does. But you get some you get some opportunities to play some of these better teams at home, and you can stack up some wins against the lower tier Big 12 teams, because not all Big 12 women's teams are made the same.
Sure.
Not as much on the men's side, at least. So I don't know. You get 2 chances against TCU. I think I saw Cincinnati twice in there, and Cincinnati's not a particularly good women's basketball team. So I don't know.
Twice against TCU is rough, though. That could be 2 losses. I mean,
that is true, right? Yeah. I mean, you just have to look at it as you have 2 opportunities to try to get a win there. And if you beat TCU twice, we're having a totally different conversation.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know.
You'd have to imagine that if they're gonna, that they would probably split them. But yes, if you win, that's what Mark Kellogg's telling his team. Hey, we have 2 opportunities. That you're like a coach. Like we have 2 opportunities here to get these staple wins. But there's the naysayer outlook of you play like this, you're gonna lose both games.
Yeah.
You maybe would rather have Cincinnati, those teams being your double up opponents, because at least they're likely victories. But this team needs to run through December. This team needs to get wins before Big 12 play. This team, honestly, Luke, too, as we round out the show, and it's not easy to do this. And yeah, they lost to Ohio State too, so it proves they're very vulnerable. It wasn't just one bad night at the office. They need to not only get a win in Big 12 play and even against Georgia Tech and Texas A&M, they need, if they really want a solid seed line, they need an impressive outing and to dominate somebody on the power level.
Yeah.
They're getting 30-point plus wins against Mercyhurst. They're going to, and I'm not saying 30, they're going to have to beat one of these other power teams by 20, one of those times, in order to get back to where they were in the eyes of the voters, in the eyes of the metrics. I feel like they're going to have Georgia Tech or A&M. If they can beat one of them by 20 or open up Big 12 play against Houston and those teams, beat one of them by 15 to 20, then I think you're in business.
Yeah.
But if they're just winning those games by a basket, then you're in trouble. But they could do it. It's not unheard of for this team. They have the ability to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And they did that last year against Texas A&M. They had a really great game against Texas A&M. They handled them just about no problem. So I think that's definitely on the table there, and that would be a way, so that looks better on the metrics. And Georgia Tech's been a pretty stable women's basketball program in recent years, honestly. So if you can beat them by a
Yeah.
comfortable deficit at home, that will also be. I mean, I think I am with you where I do think you really need to go the rest of the way in non-con undefeated, and and then you're kind of like we talked, a little bit with the football team at the end of the season.
Yeah.
You're kind of having that roller coaster, that incline go up going into conference play between Georgia Tech and Texas A&M. And then you have Houston at home and Kansas State. And, you just kind of jump right into Big 12 play, having already had that kind of intense competition with P4 teams. So then you can try to carry that over. And so that's what I'm seeing right now with the opportunity that they have on the schedule right now. But they absolutely have to go for, and they have to turn it around. You can't have any more games like they had to Villanova against opponents like Villanova. That's
Yeah.
the main thing.
Yeah, and the issue is that while they have the ability to double up A&M, Georgia Tech, Big 12 play, clearly from what we've seen against Ohio State and Villanova, they also have the opportunity to lose those games. And they cannot afford to put that effort forth and lose those games anymore. And they need to kind of prove themselves all over again. We will see what they do. Again, Mark Kellogg's a great coach. It is a really solid program. I think it was pretty surprising for everybody who was aware of what happened against Villanova. Again, it's not just that they lost, it is the way they lost, and that should never happen with that team, with a veteran group, with that coaching staff. That just should never happen. Again, you can get upset. You can't lose that way and then complain about a seed line later on. They need to somehow make up for it, and we will see if they do. Luke Blain, Mike Asti here. That'll do it for this edition of Mountaineer Report. Luke will have some coverage of the men's team back at work near him there at home in Charleston, and then onward and upward the rest of the calendar here in 2025 as we'll check into where the men's and women's teams stand. And maybe then feels like it's not actually that far from now, especially when we're talking football recruiting, but maybe then the football team gets more into the offseason, they get into the winter portal, and then spring ball will start before you know it here. Not to move the calendar along too much, but there's reason for Mountaineer Nation to be happy this holiday season when it maybe didn't feel like that a couple months ago. So we'll see if that continues on as we continue on with this holiday season for Mountaineer Nation.